My mom guilt-tripped me for decades, tried to steal all my money, and tried to con me in the lowest way possible, so I documented everything and turned her flying monkeys against her. Ever since I was little, my mom taught me that I should always give up my happiness for hers, and so my dreams in life of being happy relied on the fact my mom was happy too. For example, when I was 8, I heard her complaining about wanting a new teapot, so I stayed up after school for 3 nights, trying to learn paper mache. I painted it with her favorite colors, but when I gave it to her, she scoffed, said it was useless, and tossed it in the trash like it was junk mail. I should have known better by then, but I kept trying. In middle school, I saved up my lunch money for 2 months to buy her a scarf I saw in a store window. I skipped meals to afford it. She opened the box, said, "This color washes me out," and never wore it once. When I was 14, I taught myself how to make lasagna because she mentioned missing her mom's cooking. I burned my hands and nearly set off the fire alarm trying to get it right. She took one bite, said it was too salty, and ordered takeout instead. I think I knew all along what she was doing was wrong, but I had been raised to crave her approval so badly, I never had it in me to realize my own self-worth. Until now. You see, for the past 5 years, I've put myself through hell voluntarily with just one goal in mind. I worked double shifts, lived on ramen and bulk rice, skipped outings with friends, and sold off my gaming setup one piece at a time. Also, I could buy my mom a nice car. She'd raised me on her own, and while she wasn't the most affectionate person, I always believed that deep down, she loved me. Her old car had been giving out for years. I remember her complaining after every mechanic visit. "They just patch it up, never fix it," she'd say. So I made it my mission. I would surprise her with something she could be proud of. Every time I wanted to quit, I pictured her smile, her hugging me with tears in her eyes saying, "I'm so proud of you." That image kept me going, and then it happened. After saving for years, I bought a clean, used Toyota Camry. Low mileage, reliable, paid in full. I even had it detailed before delivery. I pulled into her driveway with a giant red bow strapped to the hood. I texted her to come outside. "Whose car's that?" she asked. "It's yours. I've been saving for years. I wanted to say thank you." She just stared at it. "It's used?" I said, "Yeah, but it's in great shape. I couldn't afford a brand new. You know I always wanted a Lexus." I thought she was joking. She wasn't. "I don't drive used cars," she said, turning and walking back into the house. It felt like someone had punched me in the chest. I followed her in. "Wait, what are you talking about? You said your car was falling apart. I saved for 5 years. 5 years and you could only afford a Toyota?" The words hit harder than any slap. I didn't know what to say. That night, I left the keys on her kitchen counter. She didn't say goodbye, just kept scrolling on her phone. I sat in my car and cried for the first time in years, and it's while crying that I got a call from my aunt. She said, "Your mom told everyone you tried to bribe her with a junker, said you're trying to humiliate her." I couldn't believe it. "She said you always embarrassed her," my aunt added quietly. That's when I realized it wasn't about the car. It never was. I had mistaken need for love, gratitude for affection. I realized she never really saw me as her son, just as someone who owed her something. And so, I stopped calling, stopped texting, stopped hoping. Months passed, and the car sat in her driveway, untouched. I remember wondering if she'd at least have the courtesy to give it back to me. But no, I found out she sold it, and took herself on holiday with the money. That was my final straw. I moved on, or at least I tried. I started spending time with my coworker Marcus's family. I did it to take my mind off of how my whole life my mom never loved me, even though I gave her everything. Marcus's family was only supposed to be a placeholder until I got it together. But then something happened. They liked me, for me. It wasn't long before they began inviting me to birthdays, barbecues, movie nights, and for the first time in my life, I felt wanted. But still, no matter what I did, I couldn't get mom out of her mind. I missed the mom I had imagined, the one I thought would hug me and say I love you when I handed her those keys. But the truth was, I bought her a car, and she disowned me over the brand name, and I wasn't gonna let her get away with it. I remember there was a period I became consumed with revenge, with destroying my mom's life. I was going to go through with it too, but the thing was, every time those thoughts creeped in, Marcus's family's love was right here to keep me grounded. I remember one night, after I fixed their sink, Marcus's mom hugged me and said, "You're part of the family now." I nearly cried, because with them, I didn't feel like I had to earn love. It was just given. And meanwhile, while I was healing, my mom's silence continued. I'd see her posts on social media, check-ins at expensive restaurants, photos of new clothes with designer labels still visible, carefully staged selfies with captions about self-care and knowing your worth. She never mentioned me. It was like I'd never existed. But then, about 3 months after the car incident, I ran into my cousin Alex at the grocery store. We hadn't talked much since elevated school. He'd always been closer to my mom than to me, oddly enough. He gave me this weird look, somewhere between pity and disgust. "So you just abandoned her, huh?" he said, blocking my cart in the cereal aisle. I had no idea what he was talking about. I told him as much. "Aunt Karen says you stopped calling her, stopped coming around, says you got mad because she didn't want your charity." He shook his head. Cold, man. Really cold. I stood there, box of store-brand cornflakes in hand, completely stunned. That was the story she was telling people? That I'd abandoned her because she rejected my charity? I tried to explain what really happened, but Alex just held up his hand. He told me my mom had been struggling, that her car finally died completely, and she couldn't afford to replace it. Said she'd lost her job because she couldn't get to work reliably. Said she was too proud to to ask me for help after how I'd treated her. My head was spinning. This was complete fiction. She'd sold the car I gave her. I knew because Jessica had told me she'd seen it listed online, and now she was telling everyone I'd abandoned her when she needed me. I went home and tried to process it all. Part of me wanted to call her out, to set the record straight with everyone, but another part of me knew it wouldn't matter. She'd been rewriting our history for years, casting herself as the struggling single mom with the ungrateful son. People believed what they wanted to believe, so I decided to just move on. I focused on my job, on my classes, on my new surrogate family with Marcus and Patricia. I even started dating again. Nothing serious, just coffee with a coworker named Morgan who worked in shipping. Life was slowly getting better. Then, about 6 months after the car incident, I got a text from my mom. Just 2 words: need help. I stared at my phone for a long time. Part of me wanted to ignore it, to protect myself from whatever new disappointment was coming. But another part, the part that still remembered being a little kid who just wanted his mom's approval, couldn't ignore it. I called her. No answer. I texted back asking what she needed. No response. After an hour of silence, I started to worry. What if she was really in trouble? What if she was hurt? I drove to her apartment. It was a new place. She'd moved about a year ago to a better neighborhood, though the rent was higher. When I got there, I knocked on the door. No answer. I was about to leave when I heard movement inside. "Mom?" I called through the door. "It's me. Are you okay?" The door opened, and there she was. Not hurt, not in distress. Perfectly fine in designer jeans and a silk blouse I'd never seen before. Her hair was freshly colored, her nails professionally done. "Oh good, you're here," she said, turning away and walking back inside, leaving the door open for me to follow. "I need you to set up my new TV. The delivery guys just left it in the box." I stood in the doorway, stunned. This was the emergency? Setting up a TV? I should have left. I know that now. But I went inside, still conditioned to seek her approval. The TV was massive, a 65-inch smart TV that must have cost at least $1,000. The box sat unopened in her living room, which I noticed had all new furniture since the last time I'd visited. As I unpacked the TV, she chatted about her new job at a real estate office, about the amazing people she worked with, about the dinner party she was hosting that weekend. Not once did she ask about me, or acknowledge the months of silence between us. I mounted the TV on her wall, set up all the connections, programmed the remote. It took about 2 hours. When I finished, she glanced at it and said, "The screen looks smaller than I thought it would. No thank you." No offer of a drink or a meal. Nothing. I was about to leave when I noticed something on her coffee table. A brochure for a Lexus dealership, with the ES model circled in red pen. Next to it was a bank statement with my name on it. "What's this?" I asked, pointing to the statement. She shrugged, too casual. "Oh, I was helping you organize your finances. You've always been bad with money." I picked up the statement. It was from my savings account, the one I'd emptied to buy her the Toyota. But there was a balance showing, a big one, almost exactly what I'd spent on her car. "Where did this money come from?" I asked, my voice tight. She waved her hand dismissively. "I made a small deposit to help you out. You're always so dramatic about money." A small deposit? It was thousands of dollars. And then it clicked. She'd sold the Toyota. This was the money from selling the car I'd bought her, the car she'd rejected because it wasn't a Lexus. "You're planning to use my money to buy yourself a Lexus?" I couldn't keep the disbelief from my voice. She rolled her eyes. "It's not your money. I sold a car that was given to me. And yes, I'm finally getting what I deserve. What's the problem?" The problem was that she'd taken 5 years of my sacrifice, rejected it, profited from it, and now expected me to be okay with it funding her luxury purchase. The problem was that she saw nothing wrong with any of this. I told her I was taking the money back. It was mine. I'd saved it, and she'd rejected the gift it had purchased. She laughed in my face. "Good luck with that," she said. "I put it in your old account, the one we set up when you were 16. I'm still a co-signer, remember?" She was right. When I'd opened my first bank account as a teenager, she'd been added as a co-signer. I'd never removed her because I'd opened new accounts as an adult and rarely used that old one. But legally, she had as much right to that money as I did. I left her apartment feeling sick. She'd outmaneuvered me again, just like she always did. I called the bank immediately, but they confirmed what I already knew. As a co-signer, she had full access to withdraw funds. The best I could do was close the account to prevent future withdrawals, but the money that was already gone was gone. The next day, I got a call from Jessica. She sounded upset. "Did you threaten your mother?" she demanded without even saying hello. "What? No, I just went over to help her set up a TV." Jessica didn't believe me. Apparently my mom had told her I'd shown up unannounced, demanded money, and became threatening when she refused. She'd told Jessica she was afraid of me, that she might need to get a restraining order. I was floored. This was insane. I tried to explain what really happened, but Jessica had already made up her mind. She told me I needed professional help and hung up. Within days, the story had spread through my entire extended family. Cousins I hadn't spoken to in years were sending me angry texts. An uncle I barely knew called to tell me he was disappointed in me. Even my grandfather, who lived in a nursing home 3 states away, somehow heard and left a voicemail saying I should be ashamed of myself. I felt like I was losing my mind. How was this happening? How was I the villain in this story? Marcus noticed something was wrong. I'd been distracted at work, making careless mistakes I never would have made before. He pulled me aside one afternoon and asked what was going on. I hesitated. I'd never really talked about my mom with him beyond vague generalities, but I was at my breaking point. So I told him everything. The years of saving, the car, her rejection, the money, the lies she was spreading. I expected him to think I was exaggerating or being dramatic. Instead, he nodded slowly, his expression serious. My ex-wife was like that, he said quietly. Everything was always someone else's fault. Reality was whatever she decided it was that day. He put his hand on my shoulder. You're dealing with a narcissist, son, and the only way to win is not to play. That night, I researched narcissistic personality traits. It was like reading a detailed description of my mother. The constant need for admiration, the lack of empathy, the manipulation, the inability to accept criticism, the tendency to exploit others. It all fit. I also learned about something called flying monkeys, people the narcissist recruits to do their bidding, often unwittingly. That explained my family members' reactions. They weren't bad people. They were just caught in her web of manipulation. Armed with this new understanding, I made a decision. I would cut contact completely. No calls, no texts, no visits. I would close any remaining joint accounts, remove her as my emergency contact everywhere, and make it clear to my workplace that she was not to be given any information about me. It wasn't easy. There's no clean break from the person who raised you, however flawed that raising might have been. I still had moments of doubt, moments where I wondered if I was overreacting. But then I'd remember the look on her face when she dismissed 5 years of my sacrifice because the car wasn't expensive enough. I focused on building my new life. I got promoted again at work, moving into a supervisor role that came with better pay and more regular hours. I enrolled in more classes, working toward a business degree. I continued spending time with Marcus's family, who never asked for anything in return for their kindness. Morgan and I started dating more seriously. She was nothing like my mother, straightforward, genuine, appreciative of small gestures. The first time I brought her flowers, she put them in water immediately and kept them until the last petal fell. When I cooked her dinner, she praised the meal even though the chicken was a little dry and the vegetables overcooked. For about 2 months, the no-contact approach seemed to be working. My mother didn't reach out, and I heard less from the extended family. I started to feel like maybe I could really move on. Then one Saturday morning, I opened my door to find her standing there. "We need to talk," she said, pushing past me into my apartment before I could stop her. She looked around with obvious disapproval, taking in my modest furnishings and simple decor. Still living like a college student, I see. I remained standing by the open door, hoping she'd take the hint and leave. "What do you want, Mom?" She sat on my couch uninvited, crossing her legs and adjusting her designer purse on her lap. "I'm concerned about you. Everyone is. This behavior isn't like you." "What behavior?" "The isolation, the anger, cutting off your family." She sighed dramatically. "I know you're going through something, but this isn't the way to handle it." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She was acting like I was the one who had created this situation. "Mom, you rejected a car I spent 5 years saving for. You sold it without telling me and kept the money. You've been telling everyone I threatened you, which never happened. And now you're concerned about my behavior?" She waved her hand dismissively. "See, this is exactly what I'm talking about. So much anger, so many accusations." She leaned forward, her voice softening to that fake concerned tone I knew all too well. "Honey, I think you might need professional help. We all do sometimes." I realized then that this visit wasn't about reconciliation. It was about control. She couldn't stand that I'd removed myself from her reach, that I was no longer available to manipulate and exploit. "I think you should leave," I said, still holding the door open. She ignored me, opening her purse instead. "I brought you something, a peace offering." She pulled out a small box and placed it on my coffee table. I didn't move to open it. "It's a watch," she said, when I made no move toward it. "Swiss made, very expensive. I thought it might help you be more punctual for work." I had never been late to work a day in my life. This was just another dig, another way to make me feel inadequate. "I don't want it," I said. "Please leave." Her expression hardened. "After everything I've done for you? I raised you by myself. I worked 2 jobs to put food on the table. I sacrificed everything for you, and this is how you repay me? By rejecting a gift that cost more than your rent?" And there it was, the familiar guilt trip, the rewriting of history to cast herself as the selfless martyr and me as the ungrateful child. It had worked on me for 28 years, but not anymore. "The watch isn't a gift," I said quietly. "It's a transaction. You give me something so you can hold it over my head later. No thanks." She stood up, grabbing her purse but leaving the watch box on the table. "You'll regret this," she said, her voice cold. "When you've calmed down and come to your senses, don't expect me to welcome you back with open arms." After she left, I sat on my couch and stared at the watch box. Part of me was curious about what was inside. Was it really an expensive watch, or was that another lie? I picked up the box and opened it. Inside was a Timex, not a Swiss luxury watch, a basic Timex that retailed for maybe $50, the kind you could buy at any department store. There was a small card inside with a handwritten note, "Time to grow up." I closed the box and put it in a drawer. Even her peace offerings were designed to hurt. The next day, Morgan came over. We'd planned to watch movies and order takeout, a simple, relaxing Sunday. But when she arrived, she seemed hesitant, almost nervous. "Is everything okay?" I asked, as she perched on the edge of my couch instead of settling in comfortably like she usually did. "I got a strange call yesterday," she said, "from a woman who said she was your mother." My stomach dropped. "What? How did she even get your number?" Morgan shrugged. "She didn't say, but she told me some concerning things about you." I closed my eyes briefly, already knowing where this was going. "What kind of things?" "She said you have anger issues, that you've been estranged from your family because you became violent when they tried to help you." Morgan looked at me directly. "She said I should be careful around you, especially if you get frustrated or don't get your way." I sat down heavily in the chair across from her. "None of that is true. My mom is..." She's not well. She makes things up, twists situations to make herself the victim. Morgan nodded slowly. That's what I thought. I mean, I've never seen you even raise your voice, let alone be violent. She reached for my hand, but I wanted to ask you directly, give you the chance to tell me your side. I was grateful for that she'd come to me instead of just believing what she'd heard. I told her everything, from my childhood to the car, to the current situation. She listened without interrupting, her expression growing increasingly concerned. That's emotional mistreatment, she said when I finished. You know that, right? What she's doing, the manipulation, the gaslighting, the smear campaign. It's mistreatment. No one had ever put it in those terms before. Mistreatment. It seemed like such a strong word, but wasn't that exactly what it was? How did she even find out about you? I wondered aloud. I've never mentioned you to her, or posted anything about us online. Morgan looked uncomfortable. She said she saw us together at the mall last weekend. Said she was going to introduce herself but decided not to when she saw how I was leading you on. She made air quotes around the last part, which is ridiculous because we were just holding hands and looking at video games. I remembered that day at the mall. I hadn't seen my mother anywhere. Had she been following me? The thought made my skin crawl. Over the next few weeks, things escalated. My mother started showing up at my workplace, asking to speak to me. Marcus, thankfully, ran interference, telling her I was unavailable and eventually asking her to leave when she became insistent. She sent emails to my school account, claiming she needed to reach me for a family emergency. When the school contacted me, concerned, I had to explain the situation and ask them not to share any information with her. She even approached Patricia at the grocery store, introducing herself as the real mother and suggesting that Patricia was trying to replace her in my life. Patricia, bless her, saw right through it and firmly but politely extracted herself from the conversation. It was becoming clear that my mother wasn't going to respect my boundaries. The more I pulled away, the harder she pushed to regain control, and now she was involving the people I cared about. I decided I needed professional help navigating this situation. Morgan helped me find a therapist who specialized in family trauma and narcissistic mistreatment. Dr. Reese was a calm, thoughtful woman who listened to my story without judgment. What you're experiencing is unfortunately common with narcissistic parents, she explained in our first session. When you remove yourself from the dynamic, what we call going gray rock, or implementing no contact, they often escalate their behavior to try to pull you back in. So what do? I asked. I can't keep living like this, wondering where she'll show up next or who she'll talk to. Dr. Reese suggested documentation, keeping a record of every unwanted contact, every lie, every boundary violation. She recommended I consult with a lawyer about possibly getting a cease and desist letter, which wouldn't be legally binding but might deter my mother if she thought there could be legal consequences. She also suggested strengthening my support network, being open with trusted friends and colleagues about the situation so they wouldn't be blindsided if my mother approached them. Most importantly, Dr. Reese said, remember that you can't control her behavior. You can only control your response to it. And every time you refuse to engage with the chaos, you're reclaiming your power. I took her advice to heart. I started a detailed log of every incident. I consulted with a lawyer who drafted a formal-looking cease and desist letter warning of potential harassment charges if the unwanted contact continued. I was upfront with the people in my life about what was happening, which was uncomfortable but necessary. For a while, it seemed to work. The cease and desist letter appeared to scare my mother enough that the direct contact stopped. No more showing up at my workplace or apartment. No more calls to Morgan. I started to relax a little, to believe that maybe I could have a normal life after all. Then one evening, I came home to find my apartment door slightly ajar. I immediately tensed, wondering if I was being robbed. I considered calling the police but decided to peek inside first. What I saw made my blood run cold. My mother was sitting on my couch, flipping through a photo album I kept on my bookshelf. She looked up when I entered, completely unperturbed, as if this was a planned visit. You really should lock your door, she said casually. Anyone could walk in. I stood frozen in the doorway. How did you get in here? She smiled, that smug smile I knew so well. I told the building manager I was your mother and had forgotten my key. He was very helpful. I felt violated. This was my private space, the one place I should have been safe from her intrusions, and she just waltzed in like she owned it. You need to leave, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Now, or I'm calling the police. She closed the photo album and set it aside. Don't be dramatic. I'm your mother. I have every right to be concerned when you're clearly not well. She gestured around the apartment. Look at how you're living. These cheap furnishings, these childish decorations. She was referring to the Star Wars poster Morgan had given me for my birthday. It's not normal for a man your age. I pulled out my phone. I'm calling the police. She stood up, suddenly all business. Fine, but before you do, you should know I've been talking to your landlord. Did you know your lease prohibits long-term guests? Apparently that girlfriend of yours has been staying over quite a bit. 3 nights last week alone. How did she know that? Had she been watching my apartment? That's none of your business, I said, my finger hovering over the dial button. Maybe not, but it is your landlord's business, and he seemed very interested when I mentioned it. She picked up her purse. I'd hate for you to lose your apartment over something so trivial. She was threatening me, using information she shouldn't have had to try to control me again. I felt a surge of anger unlike anything I'd experienced before. Get out, I said, my voice low and dangerous. Get out and don't come back. Don't contact me. Don't contact my friends. Don't contact my work. If you do, I will file for a restraining order. I will tell everyone exactly what kind of person you really are. I will make sure every family member, every friend, every acquaintance knows the truth. She looked startled by my vehemence. For a moment, I saw uncertainty in her eyes. Then her expression hardened. "You ungrateful little—" She cut herself off, visibly composing herself. "Fine, have it your way, but don't come crying to me when your life falls apart without me in it." She brushed past me and out the door. I closed it behind her, locked it, and then slid down to sit on the floor, my back against the door, my heart racing. I called Morgan immediately, then Marcus. I needed to warn them that my mother might escalate further. They both offered to come over, but I said I just needed some time alone to process what had happened. After they hung up, I sat in my quiet apartment, looking at the photo album my mother had been going through. It contained pictures from my childhood, school photos, birthday parties, holiday gatherings. Looking at them now, I noticed something I hadn't before. In almost every picture, my mother was positioned front and center, with me off to the side or partially cropped out. Even in my own childhood photos, I was a supporting character in her story. The next morning, I called my landlord. I explained that someone claiming to be my mother had entered my apartment without permission and was now threatening to make false claims about my tenancy. To my relief, he was understanding. He confirmed that Morgan's occasional overnight stays weren't a lease violation and promised to alert the building manager not to let anyone into my apartment without my explicit approval. I also filed a police report about the break-in. The officer who took my statement seemed skeptical at first. After all, it was my mother, not a random intruder. But when I showed him the cease and desist letter and explained the pattern of harassment, he took it more seriously. He said they couldn't do much based on a single incident, but the report would establish a paper trail if things continued or escalated. For the next few days, I was on elevated alert, jumping at every noise, checking my locks multiple times before bed. I installed a doorbell camera and additional locks on my door. I varied my routes to work and school, watching for signs that I was being followed. A week passed with no contact from my mother. Then 2 weeks. I started to hope that maybe, finally, she had gotten the message. Then I got a call from Jessica. Her tone was different this time, hesitant, almost apologetic. "I think I might have been wrong about some things," she said after an awkward greeting. "Your mom, she's been saying some things that don't add up." I waited, not wanting to interrupt whatever realization she was having. "She told me you threatened to have her committed to a mental institution if she didn't give you money. But then she told your cousin William that you were trying to steal her house, and she told your grandfather that you'd joined a cult and were being brainwashed against the family." Jessica paused. "They can't all be true, right?" "None of them are true," I said quietly. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. "I think I owe you an apology," she finally said. "I should have listened to your side before jumping to conclusions." It wasn't a full acknowledgement of how her actions had hurt me, but it was a start. I thanked her for calling and asked if she'd be willing to correct the record with other family members who might have heard these stories. She agreed. That call was the beginning of a slow shift. As my mother's stories became more outlandish and contradictory, more family members began to question them. Some reached out to me directly, asking for my version of events. Others simply stopped engaging with her drama. It wasn't a complete vindication. There were still those who believed her unconditionally, who saw me as the villain in her narrative. But for the first time, I wasn't fighting this battle alone. The final confrontation came about 3 months after the apartment break-in. I was at Marcus and Patricia's house for their youngest daughter's birthday party. It was a chaotic, joyful event, with kids running everywhere and adults chatting in small groups. I was helping Richard man the grill when I saw her. My mother was walking up the driveway, dressed inappropriately formally for a backyard children's party, carrying a large wrapped gift. My first instinct was panic. What was she doing here? How had she even known about the party? Before I could react, Marcus intercepted her. I couldn't hear their conversation, but I could see his body language, firm but not aggressive, blocking her path to the backyard where the children were playing. She tried to step around him, but he moved with her, maintaining the barrier. Patricia noticed what was happening and quickly moved to Marcus's side. Together, they formed a united front. My mother's voice rose, becoming audible even from where I stood. "I have every right to be here. I'm his mother." Marcus said something in response, his voice too low to hear. My mother's face contorted with anger. She thrust the gift at him, which he didn't take, causing it to fall to the ground between them. "Fine. Tell him he'll regret this. Tell him I won't be there when he comes crawling back." She turned and stormed back to her car, driving away with tires squealing. Marcus picked up the abandoned gift and brought it over to where I stood frozen by the grill. "You okay?" he asked, setting the package on a nearby table. I nodded, though I wasn't sure if it was true. "How did she know I was here?" Marcus grimaced. "She called Patricia yesterday, pretending to be from your work, said there was an emergency, and she needed to reach you immediately. Patricia mentioned the party before realizing something was off. I felt that familiar sickness in my stomach. Would this never end? Would she always find ways to intrude on my life? "What's in the box?" I asked, eyeing the gift warily. "No idea. Want me to open it?" I nodded. Marcus carefully unwrapped the package. Inside was a photo album, brand new, expensive looking. He opened it to the first page. It was filled with pictures of my mother and me, carefully selected and arranged to present an image of a loving, devoted parent and her adoring son. Pictures from vacations we'd never taken, school events she'd never attended, holiday gatherings where, in reality, she'd been on her phone the whole time or hadn't shown up at all. It was a fiction, a carefully constructed alternate reality where she was the perfect mother and I was the ungrateful child who had inexplicably turned against her. The last page contained a handwritten note. "When you're ready to apologize, these will remind you of what you've thrown away." I closed the album and handed it back to Marcus. Can you get rid of this for me? He nodded, understanding in his eyes. Consider it done. As I watched him walk away with the album, I felt something shift inside me, a weight lifting, a chain breaking. My mother would probably never stop trying to control me, to pull me back into her distorted reality, but I didn't have to let her succeed. I had the power to choose my own path, to define my own relationships, to create my own family of choice. That night, surrounded by people who genuinely cared about me, I made a decision. I would stop looking over my shoulder, stop waiting for the next intrusion, the next manipulation, the next lie. I would live my life on my terms, not in reaction to her. It wouldn't be easy. There would still be difficult days, unexpected encounters, painful memories. But for the first time, I truly believed I could break free of the pattern that had defined my life for 28 years. The next day, I changed my phone number. I set up new email accounts. I made my social media profiles private and removed anyone who might feed information back to my mother. I spoke with my work and school about security measures. I consulted with a lawyer about more permanent legal protections if they became necessary. It wasn't about hiding. It was about creating boundaries that would allow me to heal and grow without constant disruption. It was about reclaiming my narrative from someone who had tried to write me as a villain in her story. A week later, I received a small package in the mail. There was no return address, but I recognized my Aunt Jessica's handwriting. Inside was a key, the key to the Toyota I had bought for my mother. With it was a note. Found this in her things. Thought you should have it back. I'm sorry. I held the key in my palm, feeling its weight. It represented so much. My sacrifice, my hope, my disappointment. But it also represented my awakening. If I hadn't bought that car, if my mother hadn't rejected it so cruelly, I might never have seen the truth about our relationship. I might have spent many more years trying to earn love that would never be freely given. I put the key in my desk drawer, not as a reminder of what I'd lost, but as a marker of where my journey to self-respect had begun. I attached the key to my keychain, not because I planned to use it. The Toyota was long gone, but as a reminder. Every time I felt that familiar pull to please my mom, to seek her approval, I'd run my thumb over the ridges of that key. It grounded me. Life got pretty busy after that. I threw myself into work and school, trying to build something for myself instead of for her approval. Marcus noticed the change in me. One day after a shift, he pulled me aside. You seem lighter, he said, like you've dropped a 100-pound backpack. He wasn't wrong. Cutting my mom out hurt like hell, but it also felt like finally being able to breathe. I started doing things just because I wanted to. I joined a recreational basketball league with some guys from work. I picked up drawing again, something I'd loved as a kid but abandoned because my mom called it a waste of time. I even adopted a cat from the shelter, a one-eyed orange tabby nobody wanted. Named him Karma, which made Morgan laugh every time she said it. Speaking of Morgan, things were getting serious between us. She started staying over more nights than not. We talked about maybe getting a bigger place together when my lease was up. For the first time, I was planning a future based on what would make me happy, not what would earn someone else's approval. But of course, my mom wasn't done with me. About a month after I got the key from Jessica, I came home to find a large envelope stuck in my door. No postmark, no return address, just my name written in my mom's unmistakable handwriting. I almost threw it away unopened, but curiosity got the better of me. Inside was a stack of medical documents, test results, doctor's notes, appointment confirmations, and a handwritten letter. I didn't want to tell you this way, it began, but you've left me no choice. I've been diagnosed with cancer, stage 4. The doctors say I have months, maybe weeks. I know we've had our differences, but I don't want to die with this rift between us. Please call me. This is my last wish. My hands were shaking as I read it. Cancer? Stage 4? My mind raced with questions and doubts. Was this real, or just another manipulation? I scanned through the medical documents, but they looked legitimate. Hospital letterhead, doctor signatures, detailed test results showing advanced metastatic cancer. I called Morgan in a panic. She came right over and looked through everything with me. These look real, she said, frowning at a CT scan report, but something feels off. I knew what she meant. Even if the diagnosis was real, the way my mom had delivered the news, an envelope stuck in my door, dramatic language about last wishes, felt calculated for maximum emotional impact. I decided to call the hospital listed on the documents. After navigating a maze of automated menus, I finally reached a human being. I explained that I was trying to confirm my mother's cancer diagnosis. The woman on the phone politely informed me that they couldn't release any patient information without proper authorization. I understand, I said, but can you at least tell me if these documents are legitimate? They have your hospital's letterhead. There was a pause then. Sir, our oncology department doesn't use this letterhead anymore. We updated our branding 2 years ago. My stomach dropped. The documents were fake. My mom had fabricated an entire cancer diagnosis to pull me back in. I should have been angry, but mostly I just felt sad. Sad that she would go to such lengths. Sad that she thought so little of me that she believed I'd fall for this. Sad that our relationship had come to this point. I called Jessica to see if she knew anything about this supposed diagnosis. She sounded genuinely shocked. Cancer? No, She never mentioned anything like that. Jessica paused, but she did ask to borrow my laptop last week. Said hers was being repaired. That explained how she'd created the fake documents. Jessica's husband was a doctor. She probably had access to medical letterhead and examples of test results. I decided not to confront my mom about the fake diagnosis. That would just be playing into her game. Instead, I doubled down on my boundaries. I installed a security camera outside my apartment door. I warned Morgan, Marcus, and others to be on alert for more dramatic claims. For a few weeks, things were quiet. Too quiet, really. I kept waiting for the other shoe to drop, jumping every time my phone rang or there was a knock at the door. Then one Saturday morning, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer, but something told me I should. "Hello?" I said cautiously. "Is this Karen's son?" An unfamiliar female voice. My guard went up immediately. "Who's asking?" "This is Nurse Wilson at Mercy General. Your mother was brought in early this morning. She's asking for you." I almost hung up. This had to be another trick, right? But something in the nurse's voice sounded genuine. And if my mom really was in the hospital, what happened? I asked. "She collapsed at home. Her neighbor found her and called an ambulance. She's stable now, but the doctor would like to speak with you." I agreed to come to the hospital, but I wasn't going alone. I called Morgan, who immediately offered to come with me. We also swung by Marcus's house to pick him up. I wanted witnesses in case this turned out to be another manipulation. The hospital was busy, the emergency room packed with weekend accidents and illnesses. I gave my mom's name at the desk, half expecting to be told there was no patient by that name, but the receptionist nodded and directed us to a room in the back. My mom was there, looking smaller and paler than I remembered, hooked up to an IV and a heart monitor. Her eyes were closed when we entered, but they fluttered open at the sound of our footsteps. "You came," she said, her voice raspy. Before I could respond, a doctor entered the room behind us. He introduced himself as Dr. David and asked to speak with me privately. I insisted that Morgan and Marcus stay. I wasn't taking any chances. "Your mother suffered a minor heart attack," Dr. David explained. "Her tests show significant blockage in 2 coronary arteries. We're recommending bypass surgery as soon as possible." I studied his face for any sign that he was part of some elaborate ruse, but he seemed completely genuine. This was real. My mom had actually had a heart attack. "When will the surgery happen?" I asked. "We'd like to do it Monday morning. She'll need to stay in the hospital until then, and for several days after." Dr. David hesitated. "She'll also need someone to help with her recovery at home, cardiac rehabilitation, medication management, transportation to follow-up appointments. It's quite involved." And there it was, the unspoken question hanging in the air. Would I step up? Would I put aside everything that had happened and take care of the woman who had never really taken care of me? I looked at my mom lying in the hospital bed. For once, she wasn't performing. There was no dramatic flair to her illness, no calculated manipulation in her expression. She just looked tired and afraid. "I'll make sure she has what she needs," I said finally, "but I can't be her primary caregiver." Dr. David nodded, seemingly satisfied with this answer. He gave me some paperwork to fill out and left to check on other patients. My mom watched me with an unreadable expression. "So you're not completely heartless after all," she said. And just like that, the moment of vulnerability was gone. Even facing major surgery, she couldn't help but try to make me feel guilty. "I'm going to help arrange your care," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "But things between us haven't changed." She looked away. "Fine, do what you need to do to feel better about yourself." I left the room with Morgan and Marcus, feeling that familiar mix of anger and sadness. Even now, even here, she couldn't just accept help without turning it into some kind of power play. Over the next 2 days, I worked with the hospital social worker to arrange my mom's post-surgical care. I found a home health service that could send nurses for the first few weeks. I contacted a cardiac rehab center near her apartment. I even arranged for grocery delivery and a meal service. I paid for all of it up front, not because I felt obligated, but because I wanted there to be no strings attached. No opportunity for her to claim I owed her or she owed me. This was a clean transaction, a final settlement of whatever filial obligation remained. The morning of her surgery, I went to the hospital early. I wasn't planning to stay for the procedure, which would take several hours, but I wanted to make sure she understood the arrangements I'd made. She was already prepped for surgery, wearing a hospital gown, her hair tucked under a cap. Without her makeup and styled hair, she looked older, more vulnerable. "The home health nurse will come 3 times a day for the first week," I explained, showing her the printed schedule I'd made. "Then twice a day for the second week. The cardiac rehab starts 10 days after surgery, and they'll provide transportation. I've paid for everything through the first month. After that, your insurance should cover most of it." She listened without interrupting, which was unusual for her. When I finished, she just nodded. "Is there anything else you need before the surgery?" I asked, preparing to leave. She hesitated, then, "Will you be here when I wake up?" The question caught me off guard. There was no demand in it, no manipulation that I could detect, just a simple question that revealed more vulnerability than she'd shown me in years. "I can't stay all day," I said, "but I'll come back this evening to check on you." She nodded again, looking down at her hands. "Thank you." I left feeling unsettled. Was this a genuine moment of connection, or just another performance designed to pull me back in? I couldn't tell anymore, and that uncertainty was exhausting. I went to work, trying to focus on normal tasks, but my mind kept drifting back to the hospital. Morgan texted me throughout the day with supportive messages. Marcus gave me the afternoon off, telling me to go home and rest. Instead, I found myself driving back to the hospital earlier than I'd planned. The surgery should have been finished hours ago. I told myself I just wanted to make sure everything had gone according to plan, that all the post-op arrangements were in place. When I reached her room, I paused outside the door. Through the small window, I could see her sleeping, surrounded by machines monitoring her vital signs. She looked small and frail against the white hospital sheets. I entered quietly, not wanting to wake her. A nurse came in to check her vitals and told me the surgery had gone well. She'll be groggy for a while, she said. The anesthesia takes time to wear off completely. I sat in the chair beside the bed, planning to stay just a few minutes, but minutes turned into an hour, and still, my mom slept. I found myself studying her face, looking for traces of the woman who had read me bedtime stories when I was very small, before everything got so complicated between us. Her eyes fluttered open suddenly, finding mine. For a moment, there was confusion, then recognition. "You came back," she said, her voice hoarse from the breathing tube they'd used during surgery. I said I would. She nodded slightly, wincing at the movement. "The car," she said after a moment. "The Toyota. I shouldn't have." She trailed off, either too tired or too proud to finish the thought, but it was the closest thing to an apology I'd ever heard from her. "Get some rest," I said, standing up. "The nurse will be back soon to check on you." I left the hospital feeling strangely hollow. That almost apology, was it genuine? Or just another manipulation, softened by pain medication and post-surgical vulnerability? I couldn't tell, and I wasn't sure it mattered anymore. Over the next few weeks, I checked in regularly with the home health service and the cardiac rehab center. My mom was recovering well physically, though she complained constantly about the restrictions on her diet and activities. The nurses reported that she was challenging, but compliant with her medication regimen. I visited once a week, brief, formal visits, where I brought groceries or helped with small tasks around her apartment. Our conversations remained superficial: the weather, the news, her recovery progress. We never discussed the past, never mentioned the car or the fake cancer diagnosis, or any of the other wounds between us. It was a strange detente, not reconciliation, not forgiveness, but not complete estrangement either, just two people navigating a complicated relationship one day at a time. Then, about 6 weeks after her surgery, I arrived for my usual visit to find her sitting at her kitchen table with a large envelope in front of her. "I have something for you," she said without preamble. I sat down cautiously, eyeing the envelope. "What is it?" She pushed it toward me. "Open it." Inside was a check, a large one, for exactly the amount I'd spent on the Toyota, and a set of keys I didn't recognize. "The check is to pay you back for the car," she said. "The keys are to my storage unit. There are some things there you might want. Your childhood stuff, some family photos, things I should have given you a long time ago." I stared at the check, then at her. "Why now?" She looked away, her fingers fidgeting with the edge of a placemat. "The heart attack. It makes you think about what you'll leave behind, about regrets." She met my eyes briefly. "I haven't been a good mother to you. I know that now." I didn't know what to say. This admission, so simple, so belated, was something I'd waited my entire life to hear, but it couldn't erase decades of hurt, couldn't instantly rebuild trust that had been broken over and over again. "Thank you for the check," I said finally, "and for the keys. I'll go through the storage unit when I have time." She nodded, seeming to understand that I wasn't ready to offer more than that. "There's one more thing," she said. "I've started seeing someone, a therapist. She specializes in people like me." "People like you?" "Narcissists," she said, the word coming out with difficulty. That's what she called it. Narcissistic personality disorder. She says it's why I treat people the way I do, why I treated you the way I did. I sat back, genuinely surprised. My mom acknowledging her behavior, putting a name to it, seeking help for it. This was unprecedented. "That's good," I said cautiously. "I hope it helps. It's not an excuse," she added quickly, "for how I've been. The therapist made that very clear, but it's an explanation maybe, and she thinks I can learn to be better, with work." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. Part of me wanted to believe her, to hope that real change was possible. Another part remembered all the times I'd gotten my hopes up before, only to have them crushed. "I'm not asking for forgiveness," she continued when I didn't respond. "I haven't earned that. I'm just letting you know that I'm trying. I appreciate that," I said, and I meant it. Whatever her motivations, whatever the outcome, the effort itself was significant. We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of decades of complicated history between us. "Morgan and I are moving in together," I said finally, changing the subject. "We found a place closer to the university." My mom nodded. "She seems good for you. Stable." Coming from her, it was elevated praise. I stood up, tucking the envelope with the check and keys into my jacket pocket. "I should go. I'll let you know when I check out the storage unit." At the door, she called my name. I turned back. "I'm proud of you," she said, "for the man you've become, despite me, not because of me." The words hit me in the chest, knocking the air from my lungs. How many times had I imagined hearing those words? How many sacrifices had I made trying to earn them? "Thank you," I managed to say. Then I left, walking to my car on legs that felt unsteady. I sat in the driver's seat for a long time, not starting the engine, just processing what had happened. Those words, "I'm proud of you," they were what I'd always wanted, but receiving them now, after everything, felt complicated, bittersweet. I fingered the key on my keychain, the one to the Toyota that had started this whole journey. Then I looked at the new keys in the envelope, to the storage unit containing pieces of my past. Maybe someday, I'd be ready to fully reconcile with my mom. Maybe her therapy would help her become someone capable of a healthy relationship. Maybe we'd find a way forward that acknowledged the past without being imprisoned by it. Or maybe not. Maybe this fragile truce was the best we could hope for. A relationship with clear boundaries and limited expectations. Not the mother-son bond I'd always wanted, but something workable. Something that didn't require me to sacrifice my self-worth. Either way, I had people in my life now who loved me without conditions. Marcus and Patricia, who had shown me what family could be. Morgan, who saw me clearly and loved what she saw. Even Karma, the one-eyed cat, who purred against my leg every morning without asking for anything but breakfast. I started the car and headed home, not to the apartment where I'd spent years saving for a gift that was rejected, but to the new place Morgan and I had chosen together. A place with no history, no painful memories, just possibility. As I drove, I realized something. For 5 years, I'd lived on ramen and worked double shifts to buy my mom a car. I'd sacrificed my time, my comfort, my relationships, all for a moment of approval that never came. It had felt like failure at the time, a crushing disappointment, but that disappointment had set me free. It had shown me the truth about our relationship and pushed me to build a life based on what I wanted, not what might earn her love.